Welcome back for another video. Learning to play an instrument is a little bit like building a house. It consists of lots and lots of individual processes which have to be done well and which have to be done in the right order if the build is to progress smoothly and the house is to stand the test of time. So today I want to share with you how I start off my students in their first year and which skills I teach in which order. Before we get started with today's video, I want to say a very quick apology for last weekend's appalling tech blunder concerning my newly installed donation link, where you can leave me a little tip if you enjoy my content and want to support my channel. I got loads of messages saying, Julia, I tried, it wasn't working, and of course you were right. So it's now been migrated to a new platform. It's been tried, tested, and it works beautifully. And indeed, the first ones of you have already used it, for which I'm hugely grateful, because it allows me to have a little bit more time to make videos like these. So you can find it right below in the video description. And without further ado, let's get cracking with today's video. So how do we start our journey of learning the cello, and how do we do it in such a way that progress will be linear and in such a way that we don't pick up any bad habits and problems that have to be undone later? Well, that's where order comes in. Yeah, so that's why I'm using the house analogy, because in order to master any technical skill on the cello, there is usually another skill that comes before that has to be mastered first. So that's why order is really, really important, because if you try to master different positions and shifts, but you haven't got a solid foundation in the right hand yet, you simply won't be getting very far and you will be getting very, very frustrated. So I'm going to take you today really step by step through the process of what I teach to a complete beginner in the first year, in which order. So the first thing that I do when somebody comes to me for the first time and is keen to learn the cello, before we get started with the actual instrument, the first thing I usually want to find out about and assess is general musicianship. So what do I mean by that? General musicianship really means how good is your sense of pitch, how good is your sense of rhythm. Usually the first question I will ask is, do you have any other previous musical experience? And that can be playing in other instruments, that can be singing in a choir, because that is a really, really, really important information that will massively inform how we proceed from there. So, for instance, if somebody has got absolutely no previous musical experience whatsoever, I might just do a few little tests. I might clap them some rhythms, ask them to clap them back to me, sing a very simple tune, ask them to sing it back, and just try to establish a sort of baseline level of musicianship, because some people, even if they've never played an instrument, are inherently very, very good at that. Others, and sometimes even if they have already played an instrument, you find out that actually those fundamentals aren't there yet. Now, if that is the case, if we first of all need to start there, that means a significant amount of our initial work will be devoted to building those skills. So obviously reading music might be another element. So if you haven't done that before, what I'll do usually is I'll suggest a lot of resources to use alongside the lessons, alongside the playing, to really build the theoretical grounding and to build that sense of rhythm, that sense of pitch, timing, all of those things. So because that baseline is really important to establish, because if someone has already got a really strong musical background, for instance, one of my more recent additions to my class in London, a little boy, he had already for several years been a chorister in one of the big London cathedral choirs. So his musicianship was already at an incredibly high level before he even started playing the cello, which of course means that we'll usually be able to move at a much faster pace. Likewise, and that happens quite a lot too, that someone comes with no previous experience whatsoever. So we first of all have to spend a little bit of time to establish those things first, whilst we are getting to grips with the basics of the instrument. Now to the actual cello. The very first thing that I always do is obviously go through all the individual parts of the instruments, explain how they're made, what they do, so on and so forth. That's perhaps a topic for a separate video. And then the very next thing I teach is how to care for our instrument. That is very important. Perhaps slightly more important with children, but as I have found out over the years, not exclusively so. Now, again, probably topic for a separate video. Moving on, the very first thing that I really spend time on is creating a good and healthy setup. I published a video, quite an in-depth video about that, I think a week or two ago. I'm going to post lots of links below this where you can find all the references. And we will really spend time on finding the right setup for the individual person and making sure that the process of getting into that setup is so well understood that the student will be able to replicate that by themselves. Because as I said in this video, I think I called it the most important thing to get right. And because it really is the most important thing to get right. If we haven't got that, not much else will be going right thereafter. So we will really be doing a lot of work on everything I showed in this video, the standing up, how to align the cello, making sure the shoulders face forward, all of that, and really just getting this sense of getting comfortable with the cello. That's also so important, to just have that nice feeling with the instrument, that you don't feel like it's a sort of new foreign object, but that you really sort of very quickly become one with it. So that's the first thing. Now, the next skill that I will be spending a lot of time on is mastering the bow hold. So again, I have made a very detailed video on how I teach setting up the bow hold. Again, link below. And that is really something which we will be taking an awful lot of time over. This, again, step-by-step process, because what is important is to learn it in such a way that you can replicate it every single time. You know that A plus B is going to give you C. Yeah, so not that one day it works, one day it doesn't work. You know that if you follow those steps, it will work. Yeah, so that is the first thing we will do, really making sure that that bow hold works well. And then depending on how easy or otherwise someone finds that, we will supplement that, for instance, with lots of exercises like the ones I showed in my advent calendar, using boards and really to very quickly build the right muscles. So that is very, very, very important. So once we have got that, we will progress to learning to play open strings. And the first thing that I teach is really learning about the different parts of the arm, the different parts of the bow, which part of the arm is responsible for which part of the bow. Think the video I published on that is called Instant Straight Bow and Scratch Free Sound. Again, reference below. And that process, now that getting that bow and that arm to work really, really, really smoothly with everything in the correct order until you can do that securely with great sound quality. So that is really the first waypoint. Like, that is the first stage we have to master before anything else can happen. Yeah. So I will take on that as long as it takes. And actually, usually, in my experience, it doesn't take all that long. So that's usually something which most of my students can actually master really within a couple of weeks. Sometimes it takes longer, and so be it. The most important thing is to get that right, because if that isn't right, nothing else on the instrument is ever going to work properly. So that is that first sort of, it's almost like in a computer game where that's a stage you have to unlock in order to go to the next level. So being able to play open strings with a nice straight bow, with a good sound, with a good bow hold, that is my first sort of waypoint that we absolutely have to master. As you will have noticed, up until now, the left hand hasn't done anything yet. And that is quite all right. Because on the cello, the sound is always, always, always made by the right hand. The right hand is to a string player what the breath is to a singer, to a wind or brass player. Without that, nothing else works. And the function of the left hand really is to create different notes and later on to color those notes with different forms of vibrato. But for starters, everything evolves around the right hand. So obviously one other thing that I will also teach at this point is to pluck pizzicato. So either with bow or without bow, something which perhaps I'll make a separate video on it at some stage as well. But and with those skills, we can actually already do quite a lot, because at that point, I will then combine for instance, our musicianship work, our rhythm work with the open strings. So I will, once you can do nice long bows, then we will try to do different rhythms. So that's when we start talking about bow distribution, how much bow we use for this, how much bow we use for that. So we've already got a certain level of control. So now we can put that to good use and we can start to play different rhythms, both obviously with a bow, but also plucking. So now it's finally time to introduce the left hand. As I said in my video last week about stickers or no stickers, I never ever put stickers onto the fingerboard because that is simply not, vision is not how we control where our hand needs to go, and it creates far more problems than it ever solves. But there's a whole separate video for that. So what do we do instead? Now, the first thing I want to get right, obviously, is the shape. Yeah, I want to make sure that I really, again, build this bit by bit. And I put a link to that video below as well. So arm out in half, creating this nice C shape here. And first of all, getting the good shape. And the shape is the first thing we do before we even worry about where exactly it needs to go. Right? So that's, again, something we'll spend lots and lots and lots and lots of time on, just getting a good setup and knowing how to build that setup. And once we've got the basic idea, we will then start putting that onto the fingerboard into the right place by using the open string as a reference point into first position and building the octave. And that's really the first thing that we want to get right. And so that is another one of those points where sometimes I will first of all start, for instance, doing that, just plucking, because you will invariably find that the moment you have got a new skill coming in, another skill will become really difficult to master. So whilst your right hand bowing, whilst now you might be able to do it really well when you're doing open strings, you will find the moment you pile the left hand on top of that, cognitive overload will start to kick in a little bit, and the quality of that will deteriorate, and that is normal. So that's why, again, we have to be very, very careful about this gradation. So for the first few times when we're practicing that, very often I will just do it with plucking, so that you can really now focus on the intonation, focus on the left hand, and then once that's just sunk in a little bit more, we will put it together. Okay, once we've got that, what happens next? We will then learn to use the other fingers, and we will start to play essentially our first scale, and we'll be able to move sort of within that one octave range. And obviously once we have got that, now there is already quite a lot we can do. Yeah, so at that stage I will be giving a lot of short pieces, and especially a lot of studies, really that just drill all of those scales you have learned up until this point over and over and over, to really build confidence and build that sense of automaticity. At that stage, also the first bow stroke that I will teach in great detail is the Détaché bow stroke. So particularly the lower arm Détaché, just learning to use the lower arm by itself. I think I have a video on that in my advent calendar actually. And that is, again, one of those absolute foundations that you will need in order to play a lot of basic studies and repertoire. So that's something we'll train. And the next thing to learn in the bow is slurs, to play more than one bow on the note. So in the first year, I will want to get up to being able to play comfortably about 4 notes in the bow. And again, lots and lots of studies, appropriate pieces, and at this stage we really learn the concept of bow distribution, so that we don't just use a full bow or very small amount for each note. There's always a very the bow distribution for each piece, for each study, is always very well thought out. It's always planned. You have to think about how much do I need, which part of the bow am I going to be in. And if that's something you teach right from the word go, it's not a difficult concept to get your head around. It is, however, a difficult concept to get your head around much later on. So that's why, again, we're going to start that very, very, very early. So I want to get to this second waypoint. So we had the first one, you have to be able to do open strings with good bow hold, with nice sounds, proper arm movements, everything. Next waypoint is, I want to see you move confidently in first position, in tune. So by that point, we really move at the speed of the ear. Yeah, if we need to do a lot of work away from the cello to build that sense of pitch, then we'll do that, but we'll never move any faster than the ear, because there's no point in doing that. So once you can, comfortably play in first position, you can do basic pieces, you can do a nice détaché stroke, you can slur confidently, then we'll move on. And then the next skill I would teach in the left hand, for instance, is extensions. First of all, the first thing we learn is a backwards extension. Here, again, order is important, because a backwards extension is the one where you first of all really learn the idea, learn the shape, and once that is solidly in the system, then we will learn the forward extension. And another thing I would perhaps do at this point is look in great detail at how to make a really, really nice smooth string crossing and introduce slightly more complex crossing patterns as well. To get to this point here might very well already take the whole first year. What is important to acknowledge here is that people progress with different skills at very different rates. One person finds one thing really easy and another thing really difficult, and the other person finds that thing really difficult and the other thing really easy. So there is no point comparing yourself to the next person. The only thing to compare is, am I doing better than I was doing yesterday? So that is the only thing to worry about, because what happens in those first few months is not always a very good indicator for what happens long term. So you just stick with your program, make sure that you are mastering those skills, and provided you do that diligently and well, you will get there. So if let's say we are doing well, the other thing we might be starting in that first year as well is we will learn very basic shifting, and we will probably learn our first new position, which will be fourth position. So again, I've just made a video on that last weekend. We will learn the right setup, the right arm placement, all the fundamentals of that, and then we will learn sort of very basic shifting between the positions. And that is another stage which I take incredible care over, because if the fundamentals of shifting are not taught and mastered really right at this stage, you're baking in a lot of problems for later on. So however long that process takes, but we really make sure that that gets learned properly. And then once you've learned these fundamentals, adding more positions isn't all that difficult. In the best case scenario, in a year, I would maybe expect, if someone is moving on quickly, to maybe add a third position as well. And then really once you have those, you're already well on the way. So all of that is really my blueprint of how I start someone off with learning the cello. And again, I cannot overemphasize the importance of learning the right skills in the right order. Because what's quite interesting, because you guys are so good at leaving lots of comments and asking me lots of questions in my comment in the comment section. And what I can sort of over time now identify from those is certain patterns of problems that lots and lots and lots of people present with. And one thing that I have definitely noticed is that I think especially those of you who are largely trying to learn to play the instruments, by yourself, using videos such as mine, that there can often be a temptation to try lots of different skills simultaneously. And obviously, if no one has taught you, you will have no idea what you should be learning in which order. So that's partly why I'm making this video today, because I think it will really help you to have more of a roadmap of, okay, that's what I need to learn in the first year, and that's the skills I absolutely need to master in order to be able to do any of the more fancy stuff. So and you will, another video you might find useful, which I'm also linking below, is one on all the sort of different teaching materials and books and resources that I use with my students. And I will link the video on the beginner materials to that below as well. So as always, I hope this has been helpful. I look forward, as usual, to hearing all your questions and comments. And if you haven't subscribed already, then please do so. Smash that like button. And now that it's working, if you feel inclined to leave me a tip, you can do so as well. And I will be incredibly grateful. So I look forward to seeing you for more soon. And as always, happy practicing.